Howdy. So we are rebranding. This channel is no longer going to be called the Hill Podcast. We are now going to call it Summit Neuroflow. Whoa. Basically, same principles apply here. Tools for the upward journey. We're climbing summits. We are using elements of neurology, studying how the brain works, studying how our nervous system works, and we are understanding different psychological states through specifically pinning everything within the realm of flow, which is a psychological state. Great book, by the way. Basically, the whole principle behind it is you have the right amount of stress, you have the right amount of skill, and when you are facing life in that state, you are no longer thinking about the challenges that you are up against. You're no longer thinking about what it is that you should be doing. Instead, you are facing life full force ahead, and you are in flow state. So we're calling the channel after those ideas. Today's topic, I have a gripe, and I just want to get it off my chest. Can we talk about bottom up versus top down when it comes to modulating our neurocircuitry? Okay, we have this idea of work versus pill, okay? There's a pill for every disease state. There's a pill for every single problem that you have. You can take a pill to make your brain feel better. This is top-down modulation. I'm not necessarily a fan of this. I do think it has its place, and I do think for, let's say, if you are in an acute state of, let's say you're going into psychosis, let's say that you have the worst bout of depression, you feel, you're feeling very heavy, you feel like you can't go on with life. This is a state where I think top-down modulation through taking things like SSRIs, taking different MAOIs, this could be beneficial. Whatever other pharmacological interventions, I think they do have their place in the short term. But I think where we're falling short is kind of looking at the longer term solutions for this. This is where that idea of work versus pill mindset comes in, and we need more public adaptation of this mindset, building a foundational change for our psyche. And as a society, there's a massive mental health crisis going on. And a big part of this is that the idea of just taking a pill and fixing everything, I think, is too widely accepted, partially due to funding. So I came across this statistic here that the NIH allocates only 7 to 9% of its $30 billion budget to behavioral and lifestyle research, and that would include things like exercise, things like meditation, things like changing your life to not involve such addictive, pleasurable activities like constant social media usage. So those things, there's not much funding for them because it's hard to patent that. It's hard to make a profit off of lifestyle change. It is very easy to make a profit off of a pill that you can sell. Pharmaceuticals make big money. This is exactly why there's so much more robust data for pharmaceutical interventions relative to lifestyle interventions. And unfortunately, the lifestyle interventions, things like exercise, things like changing your diet, nutrition, while they sound all woo-hoo, that might actually be part of the solution. As a doctor of physical therapy, I'm very impartial to exercise as a form of medicine. Exercise has been well documented to assist in the process of rewiring your nervous system through the increase of secretion of things like myokines, specifically the myokine called irisin, which can help the brain basically reformat itself to enjoy simpler pleasures in life. So you can get more essentially dopamine release from things like being able to just sit down and read a book. Wouldn't that be nice? Or just to be able to sit down and look outside and enjoy the simpler pleasures in life. That's become increasingly more difficult in our society because we keep ramping up the threshold that is required for us to enjoy the life around us. So myokines was one way that exercise can help change your brain neurochemistry. It also directly impacts connectivity between the regions in the mesolimbic system. I'm going to get into this in probably the next episode, the specifics of how exercise specifically impacts your psychological health. But the mesolimbic system is a system that we should all be understanding because it is probably the most important system of the modern era within your noggin. It comprises of the two chief components, your ventral tegmental area in the midbrain going to the nucleus accumbens. And basically what happens, you get stimuli, and within the ventral tegmental area, where you have dopamine secreting nuclei, that secretes dopamine, which is then sent to the nucleus accumbens, where your brain is then able to process and say, hey, this is an activity that I should continue pursuing. Dopamine is not a chemical of pleasure. It is a chemical of pursuit. Your brain secretes dopamine when you are in pursuit of doing something. The nucleus accumbens is a very important region because it projects out to different regions of the brain, such as the hippocampus, the region of memory. So basically, more dopamine in the nucleus accumbens towards the hippocampus says, I should keep doing this activity. Let me reinforce that. I should keep pursuing that. Exercise increases things like BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is fertilizer for the brain in terms of neuroplasticity. This is stuff that I could go on and on, okay? There are tons of neurochemical mechanisms, neurological mechanisms, both structurally and functionally, that can change as a result of just something as simple as exercise. I can talk about this all day, and I feel very qualified to talk about it as a doctor of physical therapy, so we can go ham on this anytime. And there are other pieces of data and literature that I would love to go into in a future episode here, but that's just one concept that I would like to talk about in this bottom-up versus top-down approach. So when I say bottom-up versus top-down is when you take a pill and you basically directly go after your neurochemistry through taking things like SSRIs and MAOIs, versus top-down, which is using your body's own endogenous abilities to change your neurochemistry from things like exercise or things like modulating your environment so that there is less stimulus, so that your body then, let's say, brings down the threshold to experience pleasure from more basic mundane activities. This is going to be a big topic that I'm going to dive further into here. Personally, I want to make my job more pleasurable, and I'm assuming most people do. I would love for work to be less of a drag. I would love to enjoy the simpler things in life a little bit more. So that's part of the research that I'm going to be doing here. And we will definitely dive further into this in the next episode. Comments, if there's anything you guys want me to cover in this next series of episodes as we rebrand the channel to Summit NeuroFlow. I am very excited to be diving into the literature on exercise and psychological state is going to be coming up probably in the next one, but also post-work fatigue is a big issue. Like getting home after work and just feeling absolutely exhausted and miserable is a terrible feeling. Like when you finish work, it sucks to just be done for the day. You can't pursue your hobbies. You can't do anything outside of work. And so then it just starts to feel like you're living this hedonic existence where you work to come back home, to then rest so that you can work some more. So you feel like you're stuck. We will hit that very hard. We will dive into the literature to see how we can break out of that. But thank you for joining me in this quick little episode here, a little bit of an update, just to let you guys know that we are rebranding the channel and we are going to kind of move forward from here. I know I haven't been posting super frequently. We're going to step it up. This is going to be a period in my life where I'm going to want to participate a little bit more with this podcast. I want to share my ideas. I want to share the research that's out there, and I want people's lives to benefit from the data that's out there. There's some great research on optimizing psychological state. There's some great research on how exercise goes just beyond looking good. There's some great research on behavioral and habit psychology formation. There's lots of great stuff out there. So I'm really excited to be sharing this with you guys. And thank you for joining me today on Summit NeuroFlow. We'll catch you next time. Cheers.